The only thing that we're interested in is putting money in your wallet. If you want to bet the fights, if you want to have a little bit of action, you are in the right place. With my partner, Ian Parker, I am Brett Okamoto.
We're ready to rock between our parlays, our props, our straight picks. It's time to make money. Let's go.
Welcome into London, England, which will serve host to UFC 286. It's the second UFC pay-per-view in a span of only 3 weeks, and it is a big one. It is especially a big one for the former champion Kamaru Usman as he looks to avenge a comeback loss, knockout loss to Leon Edwards from August of last year. Edwards looking to defend that title for the first time in his backyard of London, England, and we are here on the ground for it. In fact, we are in the O2 right now. You can't see it, but they're putting the octagon together behind me. Ian Parker joins us from Florida, which, hey, it'll be a home game for you for the next UFC pay-per-view, Ian, so we'll see you in Florida. But for now, doing it a little bit across the pond here for UFC 286. How you doing, and what are you looking forward to in this main event?
Well, outside of an easy commute next month, you know what? I am looking forward to this main event. I'm looking forward to see what adjustments both fighters have made for Leon Edwards. It's going to be everything except for the kick. And for Kamaru Usman, can he get past that mental block of getting the knockout after being so dominant? But Brett, last week, our best bets recap, we were one Alexander Romanov away from another clean sweep. We hit Bruno Silva, that front kick into the choke. Henry Gravely did not make us sweat. That went the distance. Speaking of sweats, holy moly, Davy Grant, that's the way to finish a fight, reverse triangle. Romanov, he just did not look like himself right from the jump, so he fell there. But then Merab came through as a plus 205 underdog, really making that a really good night. And in our last 2 weeks, 10-1 in best bets. We missed out on the parlay and the long shot, but we did hit our first ever prop of the night with Mario Batista, round one submission.
Yep, a little bit of a hot streak here. I'm feeling it. So let's keep it going this weekend here in London, England. It'll be a special start time for UFC 286 as we take a look at the main card, as I mentioned, headlined by this trilogy fight between Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards. Remember that special start time because, of course, we are in London, England. So it's a prime time thing for the English fans. So if you're in the States, get up a little bit early because you don't want to miss this one. And it starts off with a great fight as well. Marvin Vittori taking on Roman Delite. You got the return of Casey O'Neill from an injury. Brian Barberena stepping in on short notice to face Gunnar Nelson, who we haven't seen in a while. And then, Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev. We'll be talking about that one in depth a little bit further along in the program. But let's turn our attention and focus on this welterweight championship, Ian. And Kamaru Usman comes in at around minus 240. It is significantly lower of a favorite than he was in Salt Lake City last year. What do you think of these odds, man? I find this fight fascinating from a betting perspective because I've been saying all week, both of these guys have a lot of reason to be confident. Kamaru Usman's telling himself, man, I've spent 8 rounds in the cage with this guy and I've dominated the vast majority of that. But Leon Edwards is standing on the other side saying, the last time I saw you, you were unconscious because of a head kick that I landed. So both of these guys have a ton of confidence. I think a ton of reason to believe why they can get this done. What did you think of the line and ultimately how you're trying to price this one?
You know what? I expected the line to be this way. Kamaru Usman dominated that fight up until he got sent to what we call the Shadow Realm, and he acknowledges that. He's not making excuses. He left his hands down. He claims that he was trying to go for the finish to capitalize what was almost a flawless performance outside of round one. What I find really interesting is that when you look at a fight like this, go back and really watch it. Outside of that one kick, it looks like Leon Edwards is the fighter that really needs to make the adjustments. Round one, he came out, I like the game plan. He surprised Kamaru Usman. He got that sweep. He landed on top on the ground. And he took round one via wrestling, which we didn't expect. But then it lit a fire under Kamaru Usman. The champ then went at Leon Edwards and started winning in the striking. Then he was mixing up in the grappling. And he really was able to do whatever he wanted. For me, if you're looking at this fight, these odds make complete sense. The decision for Kamaru Usman, he's to get to the win. And I think if Leon is to get the win, it's going to have to be by finish.
Yeah, I mean, that's what those odds are definitely telling you, that they're thinking that it's going to be difficult for Leon to steal 3 rounds away from Kamaru Usman. And I guess, when you look at the method of finishing, you said all those odds make sense, or maybe even an over-under. Man, these guys have been in the cage 45 times combined. Leon Edwards has never been finished once. Usman's only been finished twice, and of course one of them was that head kick, and it was in the 5th round. Do you take a look at the total here, or ultimately where do you try to take a bet in this main event?
You know what? I'm going to go back to what we did last time. I'm going over 4.5 rounds here. It's hard for me to really sit here and think the fight's going to go any different minus that knockout. And that's not to take anything away from what Leon Edwards did. Listen, the way he won was essentially historic, the timing of it, everything. And we've kind of seen a trend with this, with other fighters losing after dominating people that have been champs for quite some time. I just don't think Kamaru Usman would have taken this fight if he wasn't hungry, if he wasn't motivated, if he didn't want to get this back. And I don't see why the fight would be any different without the knockout. So I think this fight's going to go bell to bell. I'll pay a little bit more juice to go over 4.5 rounds, just like we did last time. And by picking that, the head kick did not impact our bet whatsoever.
So real quick, before we get to the co-main event, you like over 4.5 rounds at minus 190. Why not take Kamaru at minus 115? If we really think that if it goes all 5 rounds, it's going to be very difficult for Leon to get the job done here, even though he's got the crowd behind him. That little bit of extra juice that you got to pay for the over, how come that's why not go with Kamaru on the decision there?
Because look, anything can happen. We just saw it with Valentina. We saw it with Israel Adesanya, champions that have been dominant for a while. They're winning every single round, and then all of a sudden they get caught towards the end of the fight. This literally happened last time around, and I'm, from a betting perspective, you're trying to get as much advantage as possible. If you do like Kamaru Usman, the bet is by decision. I don't see him finishing Leon Edwards. For me, I'd rather kind of stay out of it, play off to the side, and just watch this 5-round fight. Have fun with it, and I think that's how we play it here.
Okay, so remove a little bit of the risk there. I'd be interested if Ian likes the fight to go the full 5. If you like that as well, maybe take a look at Kamaru Usman at minus 115, a little bit better odds. But like you say, stranger things have happened than Leon Edwards pulling off of a decision win in his hometown. Let's move on to these co-main event. It's a 155-pound fight. Interesting odds here as well. Rafael Fiziev coming in about minus 230. That's a bigger favorite than Rafael Fiziev has been against the likes of RDA, Brad Riddell, Renato Moicano. He is a bigger favorite against Justin Gaethje than all of those names. And I would say that Justin Gaethje, more of a household name, more of an established guy than a lot of those names, with the exception of maybe RDA. But what am I seeing here is that Vegas likes Fiziev in this fight. I got to believe that some of that has to do with the stylistic matchup, right, Ian? I mean, when you look at this fight, how do you see it playing out? And what were your thoughts on him? I think you're paying full price for Fiziev at this point. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, you're no longer getting good numbers on him now that he's really going to the top of the division. And I think stylistically, he should be the favorite. You got a guy who's very technical in his Muay Thai, very defensively sound, good takedown defense, going against someone, Justin Gaethje, who does kick like a mule, but he doesn't really hide behind it. He throws for power, he throws for knockouts, he doesn't throw for volume. He's got a chin and a head made of granite, so he believes that he can take one to deliver that, knockout. But Gaethje has wrestling, he just doesn't use it. So for me, I'm looking at this fight where it's like, all right, Rafael Fiziev is a 2-1 favorite, but he hasn't fought someone like Gaethje yet. He hasn't fought in the top 5. So how do we play this? And this one may be a little bit of a head scratcher, but I'm going to go back to the Gaethje-Michael Chandler fight where everyone thought that was going to end in the first round. You got two guys that are also very durable. Gaethje is a durable fighter. Granted, he was just finished by Charles Oliveira. I got some interesting stats here for you. Last 3 of 3, Fiziev went all 3 or 5 rounds. 6 of 8 have all gone over 1.5. For Justin Gaethje, 60% of his fights have gone over 1.5 rounds, or at least made it to the closer part of that within round 2. I think Fiziev is going to control the distance. I think he's going to work to the body. I think he's going to be very volume-ish with his strikes. And I think Gaethje is going to be a little bit more hesitant in round 1 because I think he's going to want to stay away from that and try and make it and press the pace in rounds 2 and 3, where we have seen Fiziev get a little bit tired. He's changed that against his fight in RDA. This is going to be a really fun fight. I'm curious to see if Gaethje uses wrestling, but for me, Brett, over 1.5 rounds.
Yeah, from a stylistic perspective, I like what you're saying there because I do think, hey, we see this as an action fight. These two guys are going to stand, but I also don't think it's going to necessarily be a brawl. I think Rafael Fiziev is going to look for opportunities.
Exactly.
He's not going to force things. Gaethje the same way. As much as we think this guy brawls, I think he actually is pretty tactful in certain spots. The one thing I would ask you before we move on in this main card is when you're starting to look at overs or even betting on or against somebody, we have said for a long time that Justin Gaethje does, though, he has been in these wars. He has been in these wars. He admitted that when he got clipped by Charles Oliveira, and that was something he had never felt before. Do you ever start to wonder about, when is the cliff coming? When is that jaw of granite coming? And I'm not saying that it is this fight. I'm just curious to get your take on that, Ian. When you watch these guys fight for years and years and years, when do you start taking that into consideration of, man, I don't know if I want to take an over here because this guy does have some miles on him?
I think it comes down to the style of his opponent. You know, Fiziev is not someone, and you just actually said it really well, he's not someone that brings the pressure so early. He doesn't force it. He takes his time. He works the kicks. He works to the body. And then when he tires out his opponent, that's when he really goes to the head. I think with Gaethje, he's going to try to wear him down. We just saw Gaethje get knocked out by Oliveira, but Gaethje said that was the hardest puncher he's ever fought, which is kind of surprising, but then it also says a lot about Oliveira. I think for Gaethje, if he does get clipped, if he does get finished, it'd be closer into the end of round 2, maybe early round 3. So if you want to take a flyer there, but I think this is going to go into round 3.
Yeah, I do like this pick. I think that this fight is going to see a little bit of later action. I'm surprised a little bit at the minus 175. I thought because these guys are so dynamic that maybe we get better odds, but I do like the pick at over 1.5. Okay, let's move on to, like I said, a very interesting fight on this main card. It's a middleweight fight. Marvin Vittori taking on Roman Delite. Pretty fascinating part about this fight is that Marvin Vittori went to Extreme Couture and trained where Roman Delite has called home. Roman Delite actually left his own camp, but he was planning on doing so. He trained in Thailand. But it's interesting. Vittori goes in there into a room, like I said, where Roman Delite has really improved and gotten better as he's gone up the ranks. Interesting little backdrop to this fight, and it's minus 280 for Marvin Vittori, which I will say, just personally, Ian, surprises me a little bit because of how dangerous Delite is, but I do think, yes, as a whole, what we've seen is that Vittori is just a little bit more of a complete fighter. What do you think of these odds?
You know what? I think Vittori deserves these odds. I think for Roman Delite, to your point, he is dangerous when the fight hits the floor. Those leg locks, we saw it against Dawes. Against Hawes. He is a very smart guy once he gets to the ground. But I think Vittori he's fought everyone at the top outside of Alex Pereira. This is a guy who's got great takedown defense and fantastic cardio, good striking, good offensive wrestling. And I think, he's going to probably try to keep this fight standing where he'll have the major advantage. He also is a high IQ fighter. He doesn't make too many mistakes. I don't see him putting himself in a position where he'll give Delite that opportunity. And Delite has not fought this high up in the division yet. I think Roman is a very exciting prospect. Maybe he's above that at this point. I think this is an opportunistic situation where Vittori was supposed to fight someone else, but Delite was able to take it with enough time. But I think this matchup really does favor Vittori. He also just doesn't get finished. Marvin is extremely durable, and I like him here. However, we got to go a different route. Those odds, to your point, are too high. I think Marvin Vittori, when he does win, it's by decision. I think he does that here as well.
All right, so we're taking Marvin Vittori by decision, who, by the way, I was talking to him about this week. Only 29 years old. Marvin Vittori feels like he should be in his 30s by now. It feels like we've been watching him in the UFC for a while, but the man is still shy of his 30th birthday. So that rounds out some of the highlighted main card fights that we wanted to look at. Why don't you go through the rest of the main card, Ian, and tell me what you think of those last two fights?
Gunnar Nelson, Brian Barberena. Barberena taking this on short notice, and we're getting to see Gunnar Nelson back in the cage. Look, for me, this has to be Gunnar Nelson's win, and it's got to be by submission. Don't give Barberena the opportunity to brawl because he can knock you out. I think Gunnar's a little bit too smart. I think he takes the back and gets a rare naked choke there. The return of King Casey O'Neill against Jennifer Maia. Look, Maia's no joke. We've seen it in the past. She will come forward. She will press the action. For Casey O'Neill, I've heard she's looked great in camp. If she sticks and moves, uses her striking, and doesn't just stay flat-footed, I do think she should win a decision there. And then Marvin Vittori versus Roman Delite, I like him by decision there. We get those odds from minus 280 to minus 125.
All right, there you go. There are Ian's picks for the main card at UFC 286. And before we get to the prelims, we like to have a little fun on the show. We like to add, Ian especially likes to add action wherever he can, and last week he did so. We opened up a new segment called his Prop of the Week, and lo and behold, look at what happened. We hit it. We're 1-0 on Parker's prop. So talk about that win, Ian, and then where are we going this week?
Last week went with Mario Batista, round 1 sub. We got very specific, and this week we're going to do something similar but different. I'm going to go with Muhammad Mokaev by submission. He is fighting someone who's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. However, Mokaev's wins so far in the UFC have been impressive. This is someone to keep an eye out, potential future champion the next couple of years. There is something about this kid. I think he's very smart. It's his bread and butter, and he's going to try and get it done as quick as possible. I didn't really have an idea with round because, listen, when he fought in one of his last couple fights, he got an arm bar in the third round. I do think the submission will be there for him. So instead of getting overly specific, we're just going to go with Makhachev, who's a minus 800 favorite. I believe we're going to get plus odds on him right here to win by submission.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible, especially with the wrestling and the grappling that this young kid possesses, man. He is very, very, very intriguing to watch, and it could be another big night for him here in London. Okay, so we've gone through the main card. Why don't I'll set you up here with your prelim picks. Ian, run us through the rest of the prelims of the UFC 286.
Let's do it. Jack Shore versus Makwan Amirkhani. Look, Amirkhani will come out the gate hot in round one. I think Shore is going to use his grappling and control. Look for Amirkhani to do what he does. I hate to say it worse, but he slows down rounds 2 and 3. I think Shore makes his debut in this weight class and gets it done inside the distance. I'm going to go, with Duncan and Morales, this is a really tough fight. I'm going to lean Duncan here, but it wouldn't shock me if Morales got the win. Maybe even stay away from that one. Patterson, Ashbaz. I've seen Ashbaz fight in other organizations. This is a guy, he is a dog. He will fight for your money. He's going to have the advantage on the ground. If he can put Patterson on his back, I see this fight going a little bit further than people expect. Patterson, a very good striker. Give me over 1.5 rounds there. Muhammad Makhachev by submission over Fielho. And then for the rest of the card, Lerone Murphy, Santos. Santos is a very good prospect making his debut. However, on short notice, I like what Lerone Murphy has done in his last 3 fights. We're going Murphy. I'm going to go Duncan over Todorovic. I just don't trust Todorovic's chin. If he uses wrestling, he could surprise people. However, shoulda, coulda, woulda, what if. It doesn't work for me when it comes to betting. Hadley by submission over Gordon. Joanne Wood versus Carolina. Listen, I think Wood is the more skilled fighter here. She's coming back. She should be able to get this done. Herbert versus Ludwig Klein. Herbert has just been too inconsistent for me. Klein looked fantastic. Finally, what we thought he was going to be coming into the UFC. I think that winning streak continues here. And last but not least, Ultimate Fighter winner Juliana Miller versus Veronica Hardy. I'm going under 2.5 rounds, and I think Miller will get the win there. Spoiler alert, she will be in our parlay.
Well, there you go. And if you're spoiling it already, we might as well just get right to it. Parker's parlay, which we've been flirting with all year, man. I feel like we're getting close. Where are we going this week?
Yeah, this one I'm going to start calling Parker's pesky parlay because we keep missing by 1 or 2, and it's driving me a little crazy here. But this time, I'm going for it. We're going to hit it. I am going Juliana Miller here. The aggression. Just watch out for the armbar of Hardy, and I think she should get it done. Hadley over Gordon. This guy is a very talented fighter. As long as he doesn't get put on his back and just sit there, he should be able to get the win and get the finish. Back to the well, Muhammad Makhachev. This kid is a blue chip prospect. Even at minus 900, brings a little bit of value to the parlay. For me, that's a lock. He's got to get it done. Jack Shore and Gunnar Nelson as the last 2 legs. You don't have to worry about the methods of victory here. Let's get the parlay at plus 160, and let's get the win this week.
Yep. And speaking of wins, the best bets, man. You've been staying hot. Let's stay hot at 286. Where are we going with the best bets?
Well, we talked about Team Brett and Ian with pay-per-views. We are different. I'm going back with 6 plays here. From the top, Edwards, Usman, over 4.5 rounds. It's what we did in their last fight. I think it happens again. I just don't see either guy getting finished here. And I think Usman is going to be very conservative with his defense, but control the fight. Gaethje, Fiziev, over 1.5 rounds. Vittori by decision. You know what? I've been holding off on these props and method of victories as a best bet, but this one here just feels like it's going to happen. Patterson, Ashbaz, both guys making their UFC debuts, over 1.5 there. Murphy, and last but not least, Ludwig Klein over Jai Herbert, and that's going to be our best bets for the week.
All right, Ian, we got one more order of business. It is the fun one. It is the long shot of the week. How big is that payout, and who's going to do it for us?
I know this is your favorite part of the show, Brett. So we're going to go with Gunnar Nelson by submission at plus 100. I'm going to take the underdog in Yanal Ashmaz. I've seen him in other organizations, and he's fighting someone who's primarily a striker that off his back will not be a jiu-jitsu threat, and Ashmaz is an absolute dog at plus 230. Muhammad Makhachev, it's like a broken record, plus submission. I just don't see any other way that he wins this fight. And then Jake Hadley by submission as well. That last fight, he got the fight to the ground quick. Arm triangle, I think he can do that again here, and those odds would be a really nice way to cap off the night.
I like it, man. It's one of those cards where you got some of these younger guys who are set up for success, right? The Hadleys, the Makayevs. You're giving them that opportunity to make a big statement in front of a hometown crowd. We will see if they get it done. Ian thinks they do by submission this week. So thank you for watching UFC Best Bets. It's been a fun show. We are right back here, as always, every week talking about every single card. We will be in Ian's home state next month at Florida for UFC 287. But until then, UFC 286. And don't forget about that special start time, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. It should be a very, very interesting main event. Kamaru Usman, Leon Edwards, the London crowd. I cannot wait. We'll see you next week.